Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some meta relevant stuff. YCS Hartford just happened over the weekend and there were a ton of really interesting things we saw happen, from the deck that won to what other decks did well. I don't think anyone was expecting Sky Strikers to win yet again, and of course Predaplant branded sort of came out of nowhere to the top cut. As a result, we've seen a ton of different buyouts and price spikes all over the market for key cards related to these meta relevant strategies, and so today we're going to take a look at how some of these card prices have changed. Let's get started. Kicking things off, we have Practice. So this card was basically bought out immediately after YCS Hartford after seeing success from the Predaplant branded strategy. I believe that both Jesse Cotton and Pack were on this deck and they managed to do quite well with it, so naturally people felt that they had to go out and buy a bunch of the Predaplant cards out. Practice was naturally a buyout target given that it only has one printing, an ultra rare version from legendary duelist Immortal Destiny, and was probably overshadowed and overlooked by people that were looking to pull Malicious Bane and a Dusted Gold. However, the card is actually really good. It's basically like a copy of Bird Call but for Predaplants. It lets you special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand and then search for a Predap card, but then it locks you into fusion summoning for the rest of the turn, which isn't a problem for the branded deck. There are a lot of good targets for this card in the deck, like Orpheus Scorpio, so naturally you want to see this card with a Predaplant card to help get your engine going with fusion summoning, and it's no surprise that Cotton and Pack both played this card at 3. Now initially we did see this card shoot up to like $70, something crazy. Fortunately, however, the card has settled back down quite quickly. We are now looking at each copy being around $40. Obviously this is just one event, so it's hard to say for sure if the deck is really that strong or if it's just kind of like the surprise factor that caught everyone off guard, but the strength of the deck will obviously be a big factor in determining the card's price moving forward. Keep in mind though that we do have Legendary Duelist Season 3 scheduled to come out in July, which is just a couple of months away, and the expectation is that Practice will be reprinted in there. Overall, if you do want to keep the card to play with in your own deck, I think it's fine to just keep a set for yourself since you probably didn't pay too much for them in the first place. However, if you do have any copies lying around that you don't need, definitely look to offload them as soon as possible while the card is at this hyped up price. One other Predaplant card for us to take a look at in this episode, it is Clemaido Sundu. This is a pretty straightforward Predaplant monster, allowing you to conduct a fusion summon for a dark fusion monster using this card, cards on your hand or field, and opponents' monsters that have a Predaplant counter on them. So kind of like a Fallen of Albaz type card, though it doesn't happen on summon. Now to be fair, I don't know anything about how the branded Predaplant deck works. I watched the interview that Pack and Jesse Cotton did a little bit, but obviously I don't know the deck well enough to speak to its strengths or what the key plays are. According to Pack, Clemaido Sundu is a really strong follow-up monster to have in your hand. I guess if you have your normal summon and Practice summon, you use those on like Aluber and Orpheus Scorpio, you can keep the Clemaido Sundu in your hand for next turn. Now in the video, they do also say that they each ran 2 copies of this card and neither of them sided one out, though there's also probably an argument to be made where you could run the card just at 1. Make of that what you will, but remember that you don't need to max out on this card. However, it is one of the older Predaplant cards, so this card does have 2 printings available. The original is a secret rare from back in Fusion Enforcers. Those are around $6 to $7 each, and then it also got a common reprint in Legendary Duelist Immortal Destiny, but with all the people looking for this card, even the commons are now up to $3 to $4 a piece. Seems like pretty free value to me. I ran to my locals today because I was off and I managed to dig up like 24 copies out of the bulk, so that was a pretty cool find. If you guys are among those that were searching for Malicious Bane and a Dusted Gold and you guys opened a bunch of these packs, make sure you dig these up out of your bulk because you might have a small stack of free value buried in there. Next up, we have Foolish Return. So for those of you who don't know what this card is, I don't blame you. I think that this is the first time that the card has ever seen any sort of competitive usage. It's really simple, right? It's a quick play spell that lets you shuffle 1 card from your opponent's graveyard back into the deck. That's it. Now in the current format, DD Crow is seeing quite a bit of play. Against the branded deck, DD Crow is important because it hits the branded in red target out of the graveyard to prevent it from being added back to your hand, which in turn gets rid of one of the key interactions of the deck, since it also stops them from fusion summoning at that point, which is usually where they're going into a Guardian Chimera play for an interruption. Now Foolish Return has a couple of noticeable differences from DD Crow. As a quick play spell card, you can't use it on your turn. That's okay since your opponent is probably using the branded in red during your turn, even if they're going first. Secondly, it shuffles into the deck rather than banishing, right? So this means that the card has other applications, such as being chained to Lubellion, since Lubellion can also fuse using banished cards, and DD Crow doesn't do anything against the Lubellion, whereas Foolish Return will. And finally, as a spell card, this card plays around things like Triple Tactics Talents and Called by the Grave. The card was on no one's radar and has very limited availability, so it is quite expensive. Now, interestingly enough, the card received a Lost Art printing fairly recently, which is now around $10 a piece. I think it was up to like 15 to 20 yesterday. It did cool down quite quickly. However, the rare printing is also up from the 25 cents or whatever it was before, and it's now a $5 rare, since this one printing came from back in Storm of Ragnarok. The card definitely came out of nowhere, so you might want to check your bulk rares to see if you have this card lying around somewhere. Hopefully we'll see the card get an OTS Tournament Pack super rare printing within the next couple of OTS sets in order to make the card more accessible. The next card we have here is Demise of the Land. So guys, I'm low-key happy about the event because I think we will finally see Mystic Mine get banned. If you guys look at the written report from the finals, it literally just shows each player drawing and passing turn multiple times. I hope Konami sees that Mystic Mine just promotes this really degenerate and like uninteresting gameplay. But since we just received this ban list, we might not see that day come for a few more months, and so the people who want to play Mystic Mine can continue to do so for a bit longer. Anyways, Po Jiang won YCS Hartford playing Sky Strikers, big congratulations to him. In the main deck though, he did main deck 3 copies of Mystic Mine and 3 copies of Demise of the Land in order to ensure that he saw Mystic Mine as often as possible. With the card, you're basically hoping that your opponent doesn't have an out to it, and then you're decking your opponent out or beating them down with Hayate by attacking directly repeatedly. Demise is also cool because it doesn't search Mystic Mine, but rather activates it for you, so you can't ash the Demise of the Land. Anyways, Demise doesn't have any holo printings, but rather just 2 common ones, one from Light of Destruction, which is quite an old set, and then another one from an OTS tournament pack, so fairly recent, but maybe not the easiest to pull, especially now. The card was down at $2 or so, however it is now up to anywhere from $6 to $8 for either version of the card. It's another one of those pieces that you'll want to dig up out of your bulk and offload if you haven't already. Within the next couple of months, we should expect to see a Demise of the Land reprint and or a ban on Mystic Mine, and either of those would cause the common printings to tank in price. Next up is kind of a weird one. It is White Oro Whale. So I've always thought that this was just like a bulk card from a Battles of Legends set that no one cares about, but apparently it is now worth something, though I think the card was being looked at even before YCS Hartford. White Oro Whale is a level 8 synchro monster that requires both the tuner and non-tuner monsters to be water. It just so happens that in Sword Soul, both Moye and the token it summons are water, so you can go into this card. Now on summon, this card destroys all of your opponent's attack position monsters. It can also attack twice and inflict piercing damage to your opponent, so this card can be really scary and facilitate OTKs through an opponent's board. It seems really situational, but I suppose that in Sword Soul Tenyi now, the extra deck might actually have room for it, now that Auroradon is banned, and the deck doesn't really use Halki Fibrax anymore. If you don't feel the need to run Omega or Dragite, you can use the Whale and steal games off of your opponent. The card only has 1 printing from back in the first Battles of Legends set, Light's Revenge, and due to its limited availability, it is up at $8 a piece. The card probably isn't going to see too much play outside of the Sword Soul deck, and even then it's not a card that you need to play in order for the strategy to function, so don't worry too much if you don't have this card. Expect it to be reprinted almost like a throw-in in either the next Maximum Gold or Battles of Legends set, so you should probably just dump this card for some money if you happen to have them lying around. The next card to touch on briefly here is Unauthorized Reactivation. So before, we've talked about the ABC Therion deck and how strong the strategy might be this format, and as a result we've seen a lot of the other cards from the deck go up in price, things like holo upgrades of the various letters. However, Unauthorized Reactivation is kind of left over because it has never seen a reprint, so it is an important 3-up for the deck. It allows you to equip Union Driver from the deck directly, who can tag the equip spot into a letter, which can then special summon itself out onto the field and be used as linked material. Alternatively, you can chain it to your opponent's card and equip your boss monster with an A, B, or C from the deck to provide it with immunity to a certain type of card, making it harder for your opponent to break through your board. The card was only ever available in the Mechanized Madness structure deck as a super rare, while the rest of the cards for the strategy were reprinted, like in the Kaiba collection. The field spell also received a ton of reprints, so even though ABC Therion might not be the best deck of the format, it's still a really scary one that people want to play and need all of the various pieces for. Because of this limited supply, the card is now up to $7 to $8 a piece. Not too bad overall, but it's almost back up to the cost of the entire structure deck itself. Definitely a card to be on the lookout for, as I would expect this to be another expensive piece that gets reprinted within the next couple of reprint sets to encourage people to build decks supported by the Therions from Dimension Force. The last card we're looking at for today is a pretty cool one. It is the Zombie Vampire. This is a relatively new secret rare that just came out in Battle of Chaos. It's a generic rank 8 monster that can't be targeted by the effect of special summon monsters unless that monster was special summoned from the graveyard. Now the notable part of its effect is that you can detach a material from it to have each player mill 4 cards from the top of their deck, and then if there's a monster there, you can special summon one of those monsters that either player milled to your side of the field. A couple of interesting things to note here. This card is used in Punk decks. Since you typically make Chaos Ruler and then use Deer Note to revive your Foxy Tune, you now have access to a rank 8 play. Punk is looking like a pretty splashable archetype, seeing play with a lot of other different things, so this combo that basically mills you 9 cards might be one to keep an eye on moving forward. Also noteworthy is that in Punk Synchro, you can typically use the Zombie Vampire and a milled Ash Blossom or Effect Veiler to go into Halki Fibrax and make your play from there, though obviously what you synchro into or summon out depends on how your board looks. Really cool combo, though obviously the new Punk stuff and Therion stuff came out fairly recently, so the deck is still being explored. Of course, the Zombie Vampire has just one printing from Battle of Chaos, and it's actually quite cheap at the moment since it is just a one-of. It's currently just over the $10 price point, but I think even before the card was quite cheap at like $5 or so. Don't expect this card to be reprinted anytime soon, so if you want to play the deck, definitely look to pick up a copy of it relatively soon. If the Punk engine continues to grow in popularity and continues to see competitive success, I could definitely see this card continuing its upward trend and reaching the $20 to $25 mark. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. It's really cool that we had such a big event so soon after the ban list and a new set dropping, especially since each of those things brought us some really notable changes. Make sure that you guys keep an eye on how the game is evolving over the next couple of months. We don't have too much in terms of new products coming out, so looking at the meta is definitely something you're going to have to do to identify some key cards to pick up or offload. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please do make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards we talked about today, and let me know what other cards are trending on the market so I can cover them in a future episode as well. Also, if you haven't already, do make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.